Hello, my name is Mike, and well, I'm not working on a bike. Now I've been working on cars again, and you'll notice I'm quite filthy. That's because I just came back from the junkyard. You see, in the previous episodes of the Rusty Grenade, you saw me put an aftermarket shifter lever in there and get it dialed in where it works real well. The problem though is with that shift lever in there, I had to orient the TV cable underneath. So I decided I didn't like that. I've got exhaust clearance problems. So now I got a factory Ford one from a passenger car. This one goes in the up position, and it has enough clearance that my lever can also have both on top, out of the way of my exhaust. So we're gonna reconfigure it yet again. Heck, I gotta go back into the valve body anyway because it's still not working right. And while I was at the junkyard, I also picked up an air conditioning hose from an F-250. You have to remember that this engine, both this car and the Yard Art Cougar, the engines came out of Ford trucks. So I'm going to get the air conditioning going in this car as well. Now you might ask, why am I worried about the air conditioning when the car still doesn't even drive? Well, we're there, we're close. And I figured I'm already at the junkyard. I might as well start scavenging parts that I can use for future repairs on the car. Because remember, summer's right around the corner, and once this thing's on the road, I want to have air-conditioned comfort while I'm cruising. Same with the Yard Art Cougar. I've got another one of these manifolds hanging in the wall in there, and we'll, cut them up and cobble them and splice the tubes. The main thing is the manifold portion here, which will actually fit on the back of the compressor. I also got, where is it? Oh, a bag of lock cylinders. I had removed the lock cylinders from the doors on the Yard Art Cougar, and we got keys made for them and for the trunk. I also got a neutral safety switch because this neutral safety switch was bad. I thought I made a mistake in my wiring. My wiring turned out to actually be correct. It just has a bad neutral safety switch. So we'll get those installed. And I got one more thing for old Rusty here. Something that it direly needed. Yeah, I got, for Rusty Grenade, I got a Rusty Grenade. How appropriate. Got to figure out where to mount this thing. Maybe mount it on the hood instead of the hood ornament, something like that. Anyway, stick around.
Somewhere in a dusty, dirty back alley in western Arizona, not far from historic Route 66, is an old fart trying to cram a square peg into a round hole. He'll work on anything, just as long as it's got at least 2 cool wheels.
Alrighty, I'm going to get back on the old Rusty Grenade. No, it's not. It's just cast iron. It's not a real grenade. Heck, the pin doesn't even come out. It's just a showpiece. Kind of like the car. It doesn't really do anything. Anyway, the issue was that lever, that aftermarket lever, works fine. I got it to the exact correct length to operate with my shifter on the column. Problem is, because the arm bolts to the shaft, it's got a little bit of a step, which means that the TV arm has to always be on the opposite side as the shifter arm. Because of this is the step I talked about right here. Just the way it's designed. But the factory arm doesn't have that. It's completely flat, and I can have both levers positioned in the upward position, which gives me that much more clearance for the exhaust, which is an issue at this point. As you can
see. So before I take it to the muffler shop and have a new Y pipe made, costing me more money that a cheapskate doesn't like to spend, I'm going to replace this arm that I already purchased that I didn't need to buy because I could have gotten the factory one from the junkyard like I did. This is getting more expensive than a cheapskate like me would like to admit. And the reason I purchased this in the first place is because the lever that was in this transmission, I could have flipped it to the top. It wasn't the location, it was the distance between this shaft and the pivot point for the linkage. That has to be 55 millimeters distance, and the arm that came with the transmission was only 45. So the one I got from the junkyard, I did measure it, and it is exactly the same distance here. So it came out of a car that had a column shifter rather than a floor shifter. So that's a crucial distance to know.
Now, if you watched my last video, I put a lot of nice, fresh, new, expensive synthetic transmission fluid in this car. Dumped some of it out to put that wrong shift shaft arm in it. And now I'm going to do it again. Only this time, I'm going to try to recapture some of that fluid. I'm going to clean out my capturing tray funnel thing, get all the dirt out of it, so that any fluid that comes out of the pan will get captured in the tray without picking up a lot of dirt. And then I'll try to use a differenter bucket assembly on the, anyway, I'm going to try to recapture some of that fluid. Stuff, this is adding up. I don't like it.
Here's an old cooking pan my wife donated to the cause to try and capture that fluid. So both these components are clean. Hopefully we can salvage some.
Well, you just missed it. The cheesy little stand I have, it fell over before I could grab it. No, I'm fine. Just making a big mess, I can't do any job without wrecking something.
I hear you yelling all the time, but when
I know.
When I hear a goddammit, I figured it's important.
Yeah, I was trying to capture my transmission fluid because it just did transfer fluid in this thing. And so I had this pan up there and the weight was too great and it pulled the whole thing over. And so now I've got a well lubricated shop floor.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, well, if I wasn't so cheap, I'd buy a real oil drain stand instead of this rinky-dink thing. And I probably wouldn't have this problem.
That's why they sell kitty litter.
Yeah, I got lots of kitty litter. I'm going to invest in it. See, I alone will keep their stocks high. Oh, my goodness. All right. They're now properly configured so that both levers are up. And, you know, I can still get the throttle control that I want. And I don't have to worry about it being in the way of the exhaust, you know, down in this area. So I have a nice, clear path for the exhaust once again. Now I've got this all put back together. And you might ask, well, if I know I've got a valve body problem, why don't I pull the valve body out? Well, it doesn't necessarily have to be a valve body problem keeping it from shifting. It could be something else. The problem with the valve body is if I unbolt the valve body, there's a separator plate and there's gaskets on both sides of that separator plate. So I've got two gaskets that on an older transmission like this are probably well baked into the metal, and when I separate them, they're gonna tear. They're a pain in the neck to get scraped back off, even though, you know, fresh gaskets are available. It just, I don't have to pull the valve body, I ain't gonna pull it. See, the other thing it could be is the governor. Now, the governor is a little spinny thing on the output shaft. And the faster it spins, the more these little weights spread out, centrifugal force. And as they spread out, they pull a little check ball in that blocks fluid from flowing to the governor passage. The faster it spins, the harder the fluid has to work to get past that check ball, and the higher the pressure goes. As that pressure increases, that is the signal that pushes the valves and makes them slide and cause other passages to open, causing clutches to apply and things like that. So the faster the car goes, the higher the governor pressure. Well, the way this thing is acting, no matter how fast I spun it, it never even tried to shift. And when we took this transmission, or when we got this transmission, we noticed that the output shaft seal was all torn up, and there was a bunch of mud kind of packed into that output shaft. So I'm speculating, you know, if some dirt got in there on this output shaft, because that's where the governor lives, there could be dirt in there, keeping that, keeping that little check ball from doing its check ball things. So this tail shaft isn't very hard to remove, and it's much easier to get the gasket off of it than it is the valve body. So we're going to start by inspecting the governor, make sure the governor is governing like it's supposed to, and then if that's not the problem, then we'll jump back into the valve body. I'm so clumsy. Ouch. Come on now. So here's our governor, and as the output shaft spins, centrifugal force pushes this valve outward. The little valve seems to be moving just fine. Of course, once the engine's running, the pressure is going to push the valve in, and centrifugal force is going to try to push it out. And as it slides back and forth inside this little bore, it's going to regulate how much of the line pressure becomes governor pressure. So it's looking fine. The dirt that I saw was very minimal. It's not. I was hoping. Okay. Now, there is a filter screen in the passage that feeds this thing. So even though I can't visually see anything wrong, I'm going to go ahead and take it off of the counterweight. We'll go into it and we'll just make sure that there's actually a couple of valves in there, make sure they all move freely, and there's no debris plugging that screen. I mean, I'm this far in, might as well go all the way and just make sure I don't have other issues. don't know. Just because this valve moves doesn't mean the other valve in there is good. Oh yeah, it comes right off. Piece of cake. Piece of cake. Off of that. It's a tiny little screen right inside that passage. You can just see the very tip of it. Let's see if it'll focus on it. So we'll pull that out and clean it off. Just make sure you don't have your shoes. Well, I got the governor completely taken apart. The valves all look really good. Everything slides like it's supposed to. I'm not seeing any debris in there. Heck, the little screen is even clean. So it was a wild goose chase, but it was pretty easy to get to and easier to check than the valve body. So now I know what it isn't. Alright, governor's back in. Little bit of tearing on the gasket, but it's pretty much intact on the housing, so I could probably get by with reusing it. What I'll probably do is just put a little thin bead of oil resistant RTV just to make sure. So when it's all put back together, we now have plenty of clearance here for the linkage with it up on the top. But the problem is the exhaust is right up against the pan. If I lift this up into its correct location here, then I hit the pan here. Got a little bit of clearance on this side. Thing is, I've got to be able to take the oil pan out without removing the exhaust. So this still has to be either replaced or modified. I'm going to leave that up to my exhaust guy, Tony. Now you might ask, now that I know the governor is not the problem, why don't I go ahead and take the valve body out and apart? I could. But the problem is, once again, that gasket. If that gasket tears, I'm going to have to order a gasket, and that's going to take several days to get here. Today is Friday, and my appointment for the exhaust shop is Monday. And I don't want this thing to be down and not be able to drive it onto a trailer. Right now, the way it stands, even though I don't have any upshift, I can get it on and off a trailer so I can get the exhaust resolved. And then if I have to spend some time chasing the transmission valve body issue, I can without losing that appointment time. So that's the plan. I've got plenty of other projects to move on to in the meantime. So that'll the valve body repair, that'll probably be a different video because, well, I need to get a video out and I'm accumulating a lot of footage here and I only have so much storage space on my low budget computer. So we'll move on to the next project. All right, now I'm going back to working on the rusty granite. No, it's not real. It's just cast. The pin doesn't even come out. It's phony. But, you know, it looks sort of like the real deal. Anyway, I digress. We're going to get back on the transmission issue on this. God damn it. God. I can't do nothing. Stop. Remove. Alright.